I don't know if it's fraud. It might be a violation of your contract with them. It might be a violation of a consumer protection law or something, but it's certainly not fraud. It could, like any one behavior could rise to the level of fraud if it contains this intentional deception or something like that. But I don't know that this actually rises to a knowing level of intentionally deceiving people. This is a community-supported legal education channel. Find out how you can support our mission at the links in the description below. So a number of you have written to me about this story. Accursed Farms, a YouTube channel, has released a analysis, a 1 hour and 15-minute analysis of various arguments that games as a service is fraud. I did not actually go through and watch this entire thing, but I did skim through it, and I do want to know if you want to hear more about it than what we're going to discuss today. But he's broken it up into sections here, basically arguing that games are goods and that various laws that govern ownership of goods and consumer protection laws for goods and all that should apply to video games, and therefore that certain publishers' behaviors are in some way committing fraud. And I thought I would rebut this a little bit. It's not that I disagree. He actually makes some pretty good points in here. His games as a service traits, online only, extra online features, microtransactions, subscription fees, frequent updates, massive multiplayer games, players not having control over whether they can play a game due to a company withholding the functions. He cites a sort of forum post that cites how EU and Australia have examined whether games represent a good or service. And some of this is correct, and certainly these court cases do exist and you can look them up. But is it fraud? No, I don't think it's fraud, but it's definitely something, and it's something that we should discuss. First, let's discuss fraud. Fraud is the intentional deception to secure unfair or unlawful gain or deprive a victim of a legal right. It can be civil or criminal. So are we really committing fraud here with an intentional deception by these video game companies? So we have the Fallout 76 example. A lot of people bought Fallout 76 and were extremely disappointed with it, so much so that we had people requesting information on how to file a lawsuit or how to file a claim. We did a stream on filing claims. We even built a website on helping you make claims through the mail, because that's how it's all set up. Is that fraud if they said, you know, we're making this game and then here's the game, and oh, you don't like the game, well, we're not giving you your money back, and then they just coldly go on about you know, making this game that is obviously much less quality than we all reasonably expected? Well, I don't know if it's fraud. It might be a violation of your contract with them. It might be a violation of a consumer protection law or something, but it's certainly not fraud. It could, like any one behavior could rise to the level of fraud if it contains this intentional deception or something like that. But I don't know that this actually rises to a knowing level of intentionally deceiving people. So fraud was more like, was it Lori Loughlin who had moved $500,000 through a charity to get her child admitted to, I think it was USC or something, of all places, USC, $500,000. I don't get it, but like there are other colleges, there are other great colleges. Like, even it would make more sense if it was Harvard, I guess, but it's still just as bad if it is. But that's fraud. That's intentional deception to gain an advantage or unlawful gain, or to deprive a victim of a legal right. So does it feel fraudulent when you buy something from Steam or from another game company, developer, publisher, and then later on they change something about it and it's no longer fun to play? Yeah, it feels like something's been taken away from you, but you can't forget that you signed an agreement. You assented to a license agreement for the ownership of that intellectual property, that copy of the intellectual property. Yes, you can have consumer protection laws that protect that. And in the EU and Australia and other jurisdictions, the laws are going to vary. So it is possible for a game company to have sort of a blanket license agreement and then find out that that violates consumer protection laws in Australia or the EU or future Brexited UK or something. And then they have to go and change their practice in that area. A lot of times it's cheaper for them to violate and then pay for the violation after they've made buttloads of profit. If they don't make buttloads of profit and they get fined or something, that can put a company out of business. So yeah, the video is not wrong. The Accursed Farms video is not wrong that there are potential laws that can be violated by that, but it is not correct to say, in my humble opinion, that it is automatically fraudulent to run video games as a service. If you agree that you're purchasing a license to play, in this case, I'll use World of Tanks because I spent more money on my World of Tanks account over the years than I am comfortable admitting to on stream. What if Wargaming decides one day, we're just not going to make World of Tanks anymore? Or what if they decide that the ELC, the AMX ELC, isn't going to be as fun and fast to drive around the map anymore, and it's going to get totally nerfed? Or, you know, what if they change something and I don't like it? Well, you have to read through your agreement. And I don't know that any of us, including me, on a law live stream, really actually want to read through my agreement with Wargaming and find out what my rights are according to the agreement. And then you have to juxtapose those rules with what the consumer law is that applies to your region. So I'm in the US, mostly my consumer law is going to apply here in the US. However, Wargaming is what, a Belarusian company? So where do I assert my consumer protection rights if I bought something from Wargaming, but I'm in the US? So you have to figure out which consumer protection law applies. You have to figure out if it's been violated. You have to figure out if the contract overrides the consumer protection law or if the consumer protection law overrides the contract. Both can happen. And this is very complicated, so you're not going to do that unless you have been seriously, seriously violated. And here's what's really going on, is none of these violations are so serious that any one consumer, you know, is going to put together a giant movement to file a class action, which you can't even file because you agreed to binding arbitration on a non-class basis. So you can't even really put together a class. So the damage ends up being to only in any one individual that's upset, and every one individual has to bring their lawsuit. So is it a fraud in like some broad emotional sense? Yeah, they know that they're using the law to their advantage and all that, but it's not fraud in the intentional misrepresentation sense. You've been tricked, but not illegally. You have to know what you're getting into when you agree to those license agreements, and you have to do all that analysis with your consumer protection laws. And I'm not saying, you know, snarkily back here like, oh, well, you have to do all that. I'm saying, no, you're not going to do all that, and they know that. Does that make sense? Now, when you live in a society that actually enforces its consumer protection laws, like the UK or EU does, then yeah, you're going to see more cases against edge practices, edge cases where someone has, you know, loot boxes in Belgium, for example, getting banned because they're too close to gambling. I do happen to think that they trigger the gambling instinct and therefore should be treated as gambling. Games as a service, does that trigger, you know, goods, you know, protection from your goods being disabled electronically? It might if you can convince a regulatory body that you purchased a game and that even though they're going to turn off the Warcraft server, for example, that you have the right to continue playing the game as long as you can maintain the equipment or something. But then there's also a contract involved, and in the US, for example, the right to contract around the law is pretty sacrosanct. There's very few limitations to being able to contract around your consumer rights. That's something that happens in the US a lot. So I don't see this problem I don't see us finding a solution to this problem in the US anytime soon.
I think that a surprising number of your games don't belong to you. Like a number that you wouldn't, that you would be surprised to find out, are just licensed to you. And even even older games have in their terms of service that it's a license and the disc belongs to them still. And that if you actually went through all the terms of use and all that and on those games, you would be pretty surprised at what you find.
I just give this little challenge to all of you. I see several of you saying, you know, EFF, EFF, EFF. Well, how many of you are actually members of the EFF? I don't even think you have to donate much. They have levels here, and I think they give various rewards. You can get an EFF beanie for a one-time $100 donation. Wow, there's a hooded sweatshirt. You can get some pretty cool gifts here. But if you want the EFF to be able to change the world legislatively, they're going to need money to do so. I would like to join that sort of effort with my career at some point. I think we're on the right track. I just don't know that I'm doing it this very second yet till I figure things out. 2019's, I think, the year. I keep saying that, though. So that is our show, everyone. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Lawful Masses. With you, my lawful masses. This is a community-supported channel. Thank you very much to our Patreon supporters, our sponsors, our Twitch subscribers, and shortly here we'll have the YouTube join button turned on. Thank you very much to our April 2019 supporters at the $50 plus level: John Steele, Gavin Barnard, Eevi, Andy, Kyle Mudrak, Verement, Tayne, Michael Pearce, Terry Crisp, Richard Fournier, Spirit Bear, Jan Negrey, Daniel Perez, Aspernari, Snorre, Wisotzky, Sean McNamara, Aetaric. Thank you very much for your support. And thank you to the $5 plus supporters who are scrolling on the LED panel behind me, as well as will appear in the description of the video below. I am Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney. I'll leave some room here for our editors, including me, to have some dog video in the outro. So I love you very much. Have a great week. Bye.